Harold Shapeberger, you are certainly right. You and I have been friends for a very, very long time. And I want to thank you. I want to thank the firefighters for their continuing and ongoing support and focus. I think Harold and Kevin. Now, Kevin, we're particularly proud of Kevin. I got a little cold, as you can tell. We're particularly proud of Kevin because he doesn't come from Prince George's County, but he does come from Baltimore County and was our president of our state. And I want to thank all of you for the efforts you have made on behalf of legislation. I was in the back listening to your briefing on the legislation. I'm going to talk a little bit about the Affordable Care Act, but you are certainly correct. We need to address that. I'm going to talk about what the problem is. You know what the problem is, but I want to talk about it. I want to say that, Andy, where are you? Where's Andy? Here. Hi, Andy. Oh, there you are, Andy. Andy is one of my local guys, so I want to give him a shout out, along with the other local Marylanders and Prince Georges and others who are here. I want to say that I am pleased to be here this afternoon. I'm honored to join you today. I've got my pin on. It's not my fancy pin. I've got one of those fancy pins.
Well, this one will cost you $1,000. We can use it.
I've got one of them. But I spoke to the Broward County Democratic dinner on Saturday night, and one of the local firefighters came up, and I had a Secret Service U.S. flag pin on. He said, "How do I get one of those?" So I took it off and gave it to him. He took off his firefighter pin and gave it to me. So when you talk to the Broward County, anybody here from Florida? Broward County by any chance? Well, when you see the Broward County folks, tell them I wore their pin here today. As chair of the Congressional Fire Service Caucus, it's been the privilege of a lifetime to get to know so many of our nation's outstanding professional firefighters. Since its founding nearly a century ago, the International Association of Firefighters has been the voice of tens of thousands of American heroes who have dedicated their careers to protecting our communities and responding to disasters wherever they strike. Your courage is matched by your professionalism and dedication. Almost all Americans, unfortunately not every American, but almost all Americans understand the sacrifices you make and the risk you endure when on the job. But all too often, the difficulties you face are overlooked. Like other working Americans across the country, firefighters support families and seek opportunities to secure a place in our middle class, not only for yourselves, but for your children and grandchildren. That's why the IAFF has been standing up for the pay and benefits you deserve, and why it has been an important member of the labor community. Of course, Shapeberger is a big wheel in the labor community all over this country. He's a big wheel for you, although I imagine here you're not quite as big a wheel as someplace else. You know, prophets without honor, Harold in his own.
I'm just one of the guys.
Just one of the guys from Fairfax County, just a little old Washington suburban guy. Who'd have thunk? Why it's been an important member of labor community. United in solidarity, you have made a real difference in our country. Your efforts will help more workers access the American dream. Let me say something that I say to every group of labor leaders that I talk to, and all of you in this room are labor leaders. There's so many working Americans who don't pay up, don't join up, don't walk the line, but are extraordinarily benefited by the efforts that you have made, not only this year, but in years past. So many working Americans don't understand how much they owe all of you, not only for the safety of their homes, their children, their families, their communities, but for the efforts that you make in ensuring that we have good pay, benefits, and long-term security. The American dream has always been predicated on the premise that if you work hard, take responsibility, as Bill Clinton says, play by the rules, You ought to be able to find a job that pays well, provides solid benefits, and allows you to access working men and women's possibilities. Among those opportunities are home ownership, access to affordable health care, a good education for you and your children, and a secure retirement. Democrats in Congress, in my view, have worked to defend and enhance these opportunities since even before the IAFF was founded in 1918. And we will continue to keep faith with the working men and women of this country. Harold, I was glad when you introduced me, you talked about the ability to organize collectively for public safety, for our domestic defenders. We passed that 3 times in the House. Unfortunately, it was held up in the Senate, and it didn't pass. I will tell you this, if we take back the majority, I presume, I don't want to assume, but I will work hard to be the majority leader. And I want to make a pledge to you here today. If I am the majority leader in the next Congress, that bill will be on the floor again, and we will pass it again. Thank you. Now, I'm already standing up, but I want to stand up for you as well, not only in the Congress, but as an American citizen, because you deserve to have the right to organize and bargain collectively, because when you do, your people, our public safety is better off, and I never forget that. The work that you do has become critically important in the 113th Congress, as Republicans, dominated by the Tea Party, have taken their opposition to workers' rights and middle-class opportunities to the extreme. Now, I'm not saying that as a partisan. As a matter of fact, you had a good friend of mine here this morning, Roy Blunt and I. Roy Blunt was, for a time, the majority leader, but the minority leader and minority whip. When I was majority leader, we worked together. We still work together. I like Roy Blunt. He and I don't always agree. I understand he said he came here this morning because he wanted people to know what a Republican looked like. Is that right, Aaron?
No, we had 2 of them.
Oh, you had 2 Republicans. You're going overboard now, Shaneberger. I've got an agenda item that you know a lot about, making it in America. Unfortunately, that Make It in America agenda has not been allowed to be on the floor. The leadership in the Republican Party has wasted time on partisan messaging bills that would erode workers' rights to bargain collectively, repeal or undermine the Affordable Care Act, and that would slash funding for education and job training programs. Now, let me say, I heard the briefing in the back. I was in the back. The briefing was here with reference to the Affordable Care Act and a number of problems that deal particularly with the self-insured. The problems that were presented are accurate, and we ought to deal with them. One of the reasons we don't deal with them because we passed this huge piece of legislation, in my opinion, largely with your support, thank you for that, largely very good legislation that's going to help America and American families. But like every piece of large legislation, needs to be fixed, needs to be tweaked, needs to be corrected where we made mistakes. Unfortunately, the only thing that we're doing in the Congress of the United States over the last 3 years is trying to repeal it 51 times, knowing full well that it would not be repealed, but not allowing us to focus on making the fixes that are necessary so that the results of the Affordable Care Act are all positive, not some positives and some negatives. Instead of creating opportunities, their policies would erode those of our workers. I'm talking about our Republican friends who lead the House of Representatives, and make it harder to secure a place in the middle class. Very frankly, the middle class is shrinking. I've been to a lot of countries. I don't know how many countries you've been to. In every country that I go to, there are rich people. And in every country that I go to, there are poor people, some more than others. America's genius was not that we had rich people or that we had poor people. America's genius was we had this broad middle class in America. You know, we're 70% driven by consumers. Now, if consumers aren't getting good pay, don't have good benefits and security, they're not buying. They don't feel comfortable participating in growing our economy. You're trying to make addition to that. You've made a difference with your people. In addition to the job creation legislation that I've introduced through the Make It in America agenda, some of which has already secured bipartisan support, we'll also continue to demand that Congress raise the federal minimum wage to $10.10. I presume that does not affect anybody in this room, because if it did, you'd be out of a job. The salaries are better because you fought for them. But a $10.10 minimum wage will bring millions of people out of poverty. Nobody in America ought to be working a full 40-hour week and being in poverty in the richest land on the face of the earth. We want to give incentives to work. My Republican friends talk about incentives to work. The best incentive to work is to get paid a decent salary, whether it's at the same time, I and my colleagues support investments in making higher education more affordable for working families and improving our public schools. Very frankly, we passed a budget last year that was a disinvestment budget, a disinvestment in America, a disinvestment in public safety, a disinvestment in national security, a disinvestment in education, a disinvestment budget. It passed the House of Representatives, it didn't pass the Senate. But very frankly, my Republican friends did not pass a single budget, a single appropriation bill at the levels reflected in their budget, because it was simply a number. It was not, what do we need to do? What do we need to pay people? What do we need to invest in? What do we need to grow jobs in our community and in our country? It was simply a number pulled out of the air. We're hopeful with a deal that's been made that we'll get beyond that, but sequester is coming back in 2016. And sequester will hurt our country. Sequester is a fancy word that starts with S and stands for stupid. Sequester does not relate to growing our economy and growing jobs. In the Affordable Care Act, the health reforms we enacted in 2010, which are now coming fully into effect, make it illegal for insurance companies to discriminate against women, make it illegal to deny coverage to you if you have pre-existing condition, make it illegal to shut you out if you get really sick, and prevent lifetime limits on your health care. You can cover your children up to age 26 on your insurance, and 80% of your premium dollars must be spent in providing care if you're an insurance company. Those who are in control of the House of Representatives have, as I said, spent countless hours of time not fixing, not making it better, not making sure that it doesn't have adverse impacts, but simply on repeal. The stakes for America's workers cannot be higher. And 2014 will be a critical year in determining the direction our country takes. Will we elect a Congress that protects workers and hard-won victories in the labor movement? It's going to be up to all of us to give the answer to that question. Will we expand opportunities for our middle class by investing in education, job creation, and a sustainable future for programs like Social Security and Medicare? Or will we have another do-nothing and sometimes do bad things Congress that doesn't understand how hard you work and what it will take to help you and your family fulfill the promise of the American dream? That is the fundamental question this year. That's a question you have a chance to help America answer through your involvement and your energy as concerned citizens. Now, let me say this may have sounded somewhat partisan. And Harold Schaperger's right. You want to support people who support you. You don't care about their party label. You care about whether they give you and your family support. I understand that. That makes good sense from your standpoint. That's what you ought to do. And very frankly, I'm convinced that if we look at the record, that my party will get a substantial amount of your support because we've been there and we're committed to being there in the future. America relies on you to keep our communities safe from the most deadly threats to their safety and to their property. This year, the American people need to hear your voices and know where you stand. You know where I stand. I will continue to stand with you, just as I have throughout my career. I've been blessed from the very first day I was elected to the Maryland State Senate in 1966, before many of you in this room were born. I've been blessed to work with professional firefighters in my state and throughout the country. One of my proudest achievements in Congress was being an early advocate for the Assistance for Firefighters Grant program. Bill Pascrell, Democrat, was there. Kurt Weldon, a Republican from Pennsylvania, former chief of his house, was there. In addition, I was glad to be on the front lines of the effort to get waiver authority for the SAFER program, which enables firefighters who are laid off due to budget cuts to get back to work and let them do the jobs they trained for. Now, your president was in my office, and he said, we have got to have this done. And we had to work pretty hard at it. Should have been easier, Harold. And Kevin, you and I talked repeatedly. Billy, you and I talked about it. The fact of the matter is that those two programs are critical and have appropriated somewhere in the neighborhood of about $8+ billion since they were started. For those who lose their lives in the line of duty, making the ultimate sacrifice to protect their colleagues and their communities from a deadly fire, I've worked to ensure their families receive the benefits they deserve through the Public Safety Officers Benefits Program. John Sarbanes, sponsoring one of the bills that you really care about. John Sarbanes and Paul Sarbanes, his dad. Paul Sarbanes was critically important to making sure that we recognized not only fallen firefighters, but focused on their families as well, so that when those who have served and given the ultimate sacrifice know full well that those that are left behind will not be forgotten. You are an example. Each of you sitting before me, and all of those men and women you represent throughout this great country, each of you are an example of the best that is America. I look forward to continuing our work together to make sure that it's always the case. And I thank you for everything you continue to do, not only for the communities you serve, but for the cause of America's workers, for opportunity, for the ladder of opportunity that we talk to, about making it in America. When I talk about making it in America, I talk about manufacturing things in America. Because if we manufacture things in America, we make things in America, we're going to make it in America. But if we manufacture things in America, we know that in order to do so, those communities have to be safe. Those communities have to know that when there is a disaster that occurs, whether it be fire or flood or hurricane or tornado, or whatever the disaster may be, there are brave Americans who every day get out of their bed and say, when the bell rings, I'll be there for you, for me, for your communities, for America. God bless you and thank you.